And now I hit continue here and see what this says to me. Haven't done this before. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think we're live on Google Hangouts and over here also on Facebook. Awesome, interesting. This is a first. We're doing Facebook Live and we're doing Google Hangouts Live. So hi everyone and welcome to the Technology for Good show. This is episode 93. I'm just going to move this camera over here a little bit. This is episode 93. For a change, we have a new co-host this week. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, Tech for Good world. Are we having a good day?
So, Dave, who are you and what do you do?
Oh, I hate this question, Tom. Me, short version. I think for me, probably a passionate techie, but probably hidden. My expertise is very much more in or has been in the world of CSR and sustainability for a number of years, and probably even more so in the communication side of that for the past 4 or 5 years.
And what are you doing now, David?
Again, that's a very good question. There's a number of projects in development, Tom. I was at this point last year helping 3BL Media with an acquisition, and when they bought CSR, and I was helping them run and rebuild that for a while. The time zone differences and the geographical was a bit of a challenge, being a single parent 50% of the time. So it was a step away for that back into the world of freelance and developing a few projects, and also 1 or 2 new business propositions and really fun, big, global ideas in the pipeline. So 1 or 2 of them starting to come to fruition now.
Cool, good stuff. And my own name, I'm Tom Raftery. I am an independent analyst. I work in the clean tech and tech for good kind of space. I do a lot of stuff around energy and the Internet of Things, that kind of stuff. And we have a show this week with a lot of good stories. So we're going to go straight into it. So, Dave, I should say, Dave here has very kindly joined in at the very last minute, because our regular co-host, Chris, had some big news this week. I don't know if you can see that post there. Let me just pop it up on the main screen. His wife, Chris's wife, gave birth to twins. Here we go. I'll pop it on the main screen. These are the twins this week. They are something like 1.5 and 2.5 kilos each. So, you know, Chris didn't, Chris wanted to do the show, but I said, look, Chris, stay with the family. No. So, you know, fair dues to Chris. Congrats to him. We're all delighted for him. So, we'll head into the stories now, because there's a good few of them to get through. And the first story that I saw that I thought was interesting, and people who are regulars to the show will know that the format we have for this show is that we start with a bad news story. And the first bad news story is here. I don't know if it's showing up on the Facebook one properly. It's from The Guardian. And it talks about how global warming may be far worse than thought. And this is a very sobering one. And, you know, we always start the show with one sobering story and then head into the kind of good news stories on how technology will help us overcome a lot of the issues that we're facing. And this one talks, and it is really, really sobering, because what the scientists in this study have done is they've looked at the way clouds are made up. And they previously thought that clouds were very heavy. Oops, I'll just put that stuff off screen. They're very heavy in ice, whereas they've realized now, since then, that actually the makeup of clouds is far more water than ice. And where this is important is that the ice would have reflected away a lot of the light and heat, whereas the water doesn't. And in fact, the consequence of that is that global warming might actually when you factor that into the models for global warming, it turns out that the global temperature, as it says here, may actually increase up to 5.3 degrees centigrade, which is far warmer than the 4.6 degrees centigrade that the older models predict. So it's like, oops.
Yeah, I would love to see some of these news stories come out in our favor. But there seems to be such a trend of more data and scientific realization that things are getting faster, more worrying, while we all sort of just keep paddling at the same pace.
It is kind of scary, Dave. I mean, holy crap. You've got a young son. I've got young kids as well. It's like, oh crap, what are we going to do? So what we are going to do, and this is what I like about this show, is that we do try and highlight some of the things that are going well and are trying to mitigate the kind of problems that we have. And to that end, the next story we have, and like I say, for people following on Facebook here, I apologize, I know the screen isn't showing it up nearly as well as it will show up when I flash it up here in the Hangout. And people who want to can join on the Hangout if you want to see it there. But the first of the better news stories is one around transparency, I guess. And it's a study done to see the influence, the amount of money that's going in to try and influence the climate change denialists, I guess, really. And what happened was there's a thing called Influence Map. It's a British non-profit research organization, and they've come up. They've done a study on people like ExxonMobil, Shell, and a couple of organizations that are trying to push the climate denial story, and they've tracked their money, and they've come up with a total expenditure of $114 million US on how much they're spending. Now they say that that's just what they can track.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big underestimate, because it doesn't take into account the amount that they're pushing under the table through the likes of the research organizations, so-called, who are trying to push the denial story as well. What they call, they refer to it here as dark money, and it's money spent on think tanks and institutes as identified by Drexel University, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So
I think for me, Tom, when you realize this is a non-profit that's done this research, I mean, you think about the resources available to them to find that information versus the resources available to Exxon and all of the like-minded corporations to bury the same information. It's like, it really is going to be the tip of the iceberg. And I just dread to think of the money wasted in that whole game playing exercise that we could have been spending on finding the solutions to these problems 30 years ago.
It is. And that's a nice segue, actually, David, into the next story. Because the next story, and I'll just flash it up on screen here, the next story talks about how the World Bank have finally, and I say finally, decided that it might be a good idea to concentrate their investments on climate change projects. And the World Bank are this large international bank who help out in developing countries with big projects to help fund them. And unfortunately, they haven't really, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't prioritized climate change up until now, which is hard to believe. In fact, they've been, in lots of cases, they've been funding the development of coal-powered plants. In this day and age, you kind of think, really, what the hell? But since the Paris Agreement in December, they've now turned completely around and said, no, 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 we're going to now concentrate on climate change. We're going to, and you can see from the headline there, we're going to spend 28% of our investments on climate change projects. And they've realized finally that, you know, the people who are most affected by climate change are people who are, you know, poor or below the poverty line, or, you know, at or near the poverty line, and spending money on alleviating climate change will actually help them far more than putting things like coal power plants in place.
Yeah, for me, Tom, you know, because I've been in this space for sort of 20 or so years, but it just constantly staggers me how the lack of common sense, especially in, you know, the echelons of power, and especially, you know, where the real power is in the financial institutions. It's like, guys, this is logic, this is data, this is science. Surely that's how you build your whole model. You know, it's not. Oh well, inevitably, you know, there are favors for friends, and that's how things work. But oh, come on, people, this is the world. You know, there's all of this, you know, data and science and peer review. It's not going away. It's gonna take money. Why do we have to wait until now to get 28% of the World Bank?
I know, and one of the stories that came up this week that, you know, you have to cut stories when you're doing a show like this, and one of the stories that I had to cut was one where it talked about how many $1 trillion.
Oh yeah, so
that was in the, I think it was the Guardian, and it talked, you know, it had a range of, you know, I think it was 2.5 trillion up to 24 trillion that climate change is going to cause in terms of damage, and a lot of that was down to the stranded assets in the fossil fuel industry, not just the actual physical damage to infrastructure. And you're thinking to yourself, seriously, guys, you know, the investment community really need to be getting on board here, because this is massive problems down the line for the global economy.
Yeah, and I think so when you look back at the bigger conversations around this topic, and for me, you know, the whole Stern report was really the first one for me that converted this into a financial language.
That was Lord Stern, or Nicholas Stern, coming out and saying we had to spend about 2% of GDP, if I recall correctly, and that was that was 2008 that came out.
Yeah, and I think for me, and especially with my communications hat on, you know, that was the first time that it wasn't really coming from the NGO community saying we need to save the planet. It's going, guys, you know, for me, at least it's an indication of people with more power and more real influence on day-to-day policy and activity. If you start converting it into, you know, that financial language. But even so, there was still such reluctance at that point, and such almost disbelief and just pure pig-headedness. Oh yeah, it's a few £1 trillion. It's not all our money. You know, we'll just wait until it becomes really our problem sometime, but it won't be our problem because we'll be gone by then.
Yeah, no, it's anyway, look, let's try and get on to some more good news, because this story is awesome.
Oh, yeah, love this.
This was published today in Bloomberg, and, you know, Bloomberg are not noted environmentalists. they're not noted right-wing either. They're nice down the center.
Yeah.
But they publish some great stories here, and they do a lot of good research in this kind of stuff. And this is from the Bloomberg New Energy Finance area, and they have this great story talking about how wind and solar, as they say in the headline, are crushing fossil fuels, and how clean energy investment outpaced gas and coal 2-to-1 last year. Now, it's not, this is all data-based stuff. This is not just opinion. This is fantastic. This is data-based stuff, and you can see they've got the charts here to show it. You can see the amount of money going into renewables, beating fossil fuels, as it says there, 2-to-1. Renewables here is the green line, fossil fuel is down here is the gray line, large hydro is blue at the bottom, and you can see nuclear way down the bottom, and we'll be coming to nuclear next. But and you can see this is a phenomenal chart. As solar prices fall from 75 to 2015, you can see the price in red falling and the installed solar going up. Cumulative installations up 115,000x in that time. and the cost coming down 150x in the same time. And of course, you've got a nice, positive feedback loop happening there. As the price falls, it becomes more attractive to roll it out, and as it becomes more attractive to roll out, that causes the price to fall even more, with economies of scale and more research going into it, which causes the price to fall, which causes it to be more attractive to roll out. So it's really awesome. And you see as well, the industry keeps doubling in size. Solar in the last 15 years has had 7 doublings in the rollout, and wind is at 4. Wind is the fall in the price of wind power is starting to plateau a little, I think, at this point. The way that wind power has fallen in prices, people have made larger and larger turbines, essentially. Whereas the way the price of solar is falling is they're making the solar panels more efficient and the inverters more efficient and things like that. And that has a long way to go yet. The price of solar is going to continue to fall, whereas the price of wind isn't going to fall as much anymore. Also, wind is a more mature technology, so it's that much further along in terms of the price falling. And then you see the coal phase out. This is the chart from 1860 to 2010, 2015 here on the right-hand side. And you can see coal went up and up and up until kind of the start of the 20th century. It dropped a little bit in the early 20th century, went up again, peaked in 1960, and it's been cratering ever since, which is phenomenal to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are certain institutions that can't really ignore the data, and I think even just great images like that can create such an impact, Tom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This last one here, this is phenomenal as well, because this is an animated GIF, and as you can see, the bottom pink part here is what's called the insolvency zone, and it's for fossil fuel companies, the independent oil and gas insolvency ratios in the US. So from 2011, 2012, 2013, it's all heading to the right and downwards. And the numbers here in the last one, when you get to 2015, you're talking hundreds of companies becoming insolvent, hundreds of oil and gas producers becoming insolvent. And some of that is down to definitely to the renewables becoming cheaper, but some of it is also down to the price of oil becoming cheaper. And because the price of oil is cheaper, it becomes less attractive to do any oil exploration. The fall in the price of gas is killing oil. The fall in renewables is killing gas. And then you have the Saudis killing the American oil and gas by keeping the price of oil artificially low. Not even artificially low, but by keeping it low. The Saudis have realized, I think, that we have hit peak carbon, and they know that there's only X amount of carbon left that we can pump into the atmosphere. So they figure, well, we want as much of that carbon in the atmosphere to be Saudi carbon as possible. The costs of getting it out of the ground in Saudi are less than almost anywhere else on the planet, so they don't care if it's $20 a barrel. And the oil minister in Saudi Arabia has gone on record as saying that he has said, even if it hits $20 a barrel, we'll still keep pumping.
Yeah, I think it's just such a fascinating time, because, going back 10 years or so, Tom, a lot of this was sort of, the conversations felt very speculative. And this may happen for, not our children, but maybe our grandchildren. And all of a sudden, like, it's not even that. This is us. This is like the next 5 or 10 years. The sort of the horizon has just come crashing forward.
Yeah, I mean,
all of a sudden,
you remember people talking about peak oil, when were we going to run out of oil? And in fact, the opposite is the case. We have a glut of oil. There's about 4/5 of the proven reserves of oil will have to stay in the ground, because we've hit peak carbon. And hence we've got this the low price of oil, because we've got an oil glut. Even if the Saudis stop producing oil tomorrow, there's so much oil now in storage that the price of oil isn't going to drop for another 6 to 8 months. That's if they stop tomorrow. You know, it's insane. There's not enough storage now for all the oil that's being pumped, and of course Iran has come on the scene pumping oil as well. Sanctions have been lifted there, so it's just an insane situation. So it's good for renewables though, because where people thought low oil would kill renewables, it hasn't happened. Quite the opposite.
No,
Renewables are going up.
Yeah, and I think for me it's that constant trend, regardless of the other pressures and drivers on those industries, that it is growth all the way, and that growth is accelerating now. But I think I don't want to keep harking on about common sense and logic, but this stuff has to happen. There is no alternative for all of this, and there's only so long that the people with vested interest can hide in their ivory towers before solar comes and burns it all away.
Yeah. I mean, I've mentioned the show before. There was this great deal done in Dubai in 2014, where the Al Rashid solar park, it's a solar park rated for 1 gigawatt. And they're building it out slowly. So they're putting out bits of it to tender. And they put out 100 megawatts to tender in 2014. And a group out of Riyadh won the tender. And they came in at 5.84 cents per kilowatt hour over a 25, that was a power purchase agreement for 25 years. So this Aqua group out of Riyadh would build out the solar park, and they would sell the power at an agreed price of 5.84 cents per kilowatt hour for the next 25 years. And that's okay if you don't have any context. You have no idea what 5.84 cents per kilowatt hour means.
Yeah.
But 99% of the electricity that's generated in Dubai is generated from burning gas.
Yeah.
And the cost of burning gas in Dubai is 9 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm already thinking ahead, and the conversation around Hinkley and nuclear. So it's like,
Okay, well, let's show that on screen then. And so this, I mean, this is a story that has been running for quite a while in the UK. Hinkley C is a power plant, a nuclear power plant that's supposed to be developed by EDF, Energy de France. And there's been all kinds of problems with it. The budgets are going long, the timescales are going long. EDF are having problems on their management board. The CFO resigned 3 weeks ago.
This will be a great soap opera. Somebody needs to write a script for this and televise it.
It's insane. And the power plant is rated. It's a nuclear power plant, which they haven't. I don't think they've broken ground on yet. It's rated to come in at 3.2 gigawatts. So it's a large power plant, but they're now saying there's no way it'll be finished by the date of 2025. Even EDF have said they won't make 2025.
Yeah.
So they can't build 3 gigawatts of nuclear in 9 years.
Yeah.
It's so, and sorry, this story I've flashed up on screen is one that came this week, and what it's saying is that it should be scrapped because solar and wind, according to this article, would generate the equivalent power to Hinkley over the plant's planned lifetime for £40 billion less when you compare the future costs.
Yeah.
So
don't get me started on UK government politics and renewables, and Hinkley in particular. I'm not too sure what their price or guaranteed price was, but I'm pretty certain it was way more than 5.84 cents. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I know it's all part of those other conversations with China, and there are games and conversations within games and conversations, but how can something that makes no sense still be considered a viable option? If the CFO is walking out at EDF,
yeah.
What does that say? And I think it was George Monbiot that the leaked, or was he sent a leak of some of the notes from one of the board meetings, which I was just reading it, and it was just fascinating that there's such internal debate whether this should happen at EDF, you know.
I mean, the bottom line, I mean, it's insane anyway that this project would be considered, because A, there's the cost, B, there's the time scale. I mean, like I say, it's 3.2 gigawatts, and the developers, the lead developers, have said that they won't, there's no way they'll make the deadline of 2025. Whereas you then see China and India rolling out, in China's case, 70 gigawatts of solar. So, you know, what's that, 20 times the amount of solar in the next 3 years. And India rolling out 110 gigawatts of solar, you know, between now and 2022. You know, it's like, what the hell? So, I mean, this is a problem. I know nuclear has to have a place in the mix. I do. I'm not anti-nuclear. Yeah. I'm not pro-nuclear. I'm not anti-nuclear. You know, it's kind of.
I think with, you know, a person with no strong opinions on this. Nobody really likes nuclear. You know, if you had the choice, you wouldn't take it. But, you know, the technology, all the renewable stuff is only really now available and efficient enough and credible enough, and there's the data to back that up. But, you know, this one in particular, it's like, Hinkley, just why?
Yeah. No, it seems to be making less and less sense. And I don't know, it's being forced down your guy's throat, and it's, you know, it's you going to be paying for the energy, and it's your tax bill at the end of the day. I'd be up in arms. I would.
Oh. Well, I'm just hoping that, you know, maybe common sense might not prevail, but, you know, as more and more of these stories about the potential downsides of Hinkley in particular, maybe we can generate a certain critical mass of public opinion and demand more action on this, because you know, you can't just sit back and watch so much money wasted. You know, I was reading an article about Hinkley about, you know, how this project's going to be different because was it completely virtually engineered, and they had this letter from all of these engineers saying, look, no, we've done this differently. And, you know, like, there's a part of your brain thinking, I'm sure they have this type of conversation every time, that all these experts are so absolutely convinced that nothing will go wrong and it won't go over budget and it'll be delivered on time. And yes, you know, I'm obviously a huge fan of technology, and I'm sure there is a model somewhere that's run by a supercomputer that links up all the pipes and all the base load dates and all the rest of it. But why is this going to be the first one to work?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a big one in France at the moment, and it's gone way over budget as well. So anyway, we'll move on. We'll find something more uplifting to talk about. So this is a cool one. President Obama in the US has come up with his clean power plan to try and cut back on the amount of power being generated with non-renewables, or to try and clean up the power generation in the US, essentially, you know, cutting out coal power plants, etc. And this has been challenged, of course, because it's the US. And it's been challenged in the courts, and it's been put on hold, and it'll have to go through a whole process. And anyway, Google, along with Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft, filed a legal brief with the DC Circuit Court supporting the Clean Power Plan. I'm not sure how effective this will be, but it's nice to see anyway. Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. I mean, they're four huge US companies. I mean, I'm surprised Facebook aren't in there as well, because I would have assumed they would have been aligned on this. Facebook themselves have very, very good credentials in this kind of space. I mean, they were one of the first big technical companies to make their data center siting policy include a requirement for renewable power locally. So it was subsequently that Apple did that, and I don't think and any of the other three have that in their citing policies. So, like I say, I'm surprised to see Facebook aren't in that group. But still, the amount of money and political capital that Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft have, it should, go a long way towards helping that clean power plan get through.
Yeah, and I just like seeing the private sector take such a proactive stance, Tom. I think it can be so easy for all of these guys just to stand back and sort of wait for the policies that benefit them. But I think more and more we're seeing the bigger corporations that have more robust approaches to sustainability are feeling braver about being seen to support a lot of the environmental improvement stuff. So, and I just hope it has some impact. Sometimes I see these things, I'm thinking, okay, well, why are they really doing this? What's in it for the companies, and is this just a communications exercise?
Yeah, I don't think it is though with these companies. I mean, if you look at Facebook and Apple in particular, the data center siting policies that they have, they're very pro-renewable. They won't site a data center unless they can access renewable power. If you look at Google, they've invested massively in renewable energy, as have Facebook and as have Apple. If you look at Microsoft, the EPA named Microsoft in 2014, I think it was, as the second largest purchaser of renewable power in the US, only beaten out by Intel. So, their credentials in this space, are hard to beat. They really are.
Yeah.
So, they're putting their money where their mouth is, to use that old cliche.
Yeah, no, I just hope they can actually affect some change.
Yeah. And speaking of the private sector, this next story is pretty amazing, and it's so one of the biggest launches that happened in this year, I guess, was the launch of the Tesla Model 3. Let me just boost the size of that there, because it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, I think I'll need glasses to read that one.
Is that better?
It is for me.
So Tesla, came out with their Roadster back in 2008 or 2008 or 2009 or so. And at the time, they had this roadmap to build bigger and cheaper cars, that were more accessible to the layman or woman. So the plan was always in place to get to this Model 3, which they announced last Friday, and it was an interesting launch because they had an online streamed launch with Elon Musk coming on stage. It's on YouTube. I had a look at it, and what was really, really fascinating for me about the launch was the first thing that Elon Musk talked about at the launch was the reason why Tesla was doing electric cars. And it was all about climate change and carbon and pollution from tailpipes. And you've never, ever heard an auto exec talk about this kind of stuff before.
No, and do you know what, Tom? Even with Tesla, they're almost like ninja sustainability champions.
Yeah.
They sell cars. They sell slightly different cars, but they don't ram sustainability down a mainstream audience throat, because they know that doesn't sell. It's a nice to have for especially that mainstream audience. But for me, it's just a great car that goes quick.
Is ultra safe,
reliable. Yeah, it ticks all the boxes of what a car has to be, and it's part of an inherently more sustainable transport system. But people buy a Tesla because it's great. People like you or I might want a Tesla because it's greener, and I definitely want one.
Yeah, likewise.
But, but I think it's for me.
But we're not the audience they're aiming for.
Yeah,
they're aiming for everyone else who wants a car that's fast and safe, and I won't say inexpensive, but not
affordable,
too expensive. And that's where they came to with this Model 3. It comes in at $35,000, which isn't cheap, but it's not Mercedes class either.
No, but it's still an aspirational product, though, isn't it? For most people, Tom. And for me, I've spent years in this space where people are trying to sell these green products and more sustainable products, and like, yeah, so what?
I know.
But this is like, wow.
So what they announced just yesterday was that the reservations for the Model 3 are now at 325,000. And to reserve a Model 3, and these are not going to ship before the end of next year, and to reserve a Model 3, you had to put down $1,000. So you went online or you went into the shops, and there were queues at their shops to do this. It's amazing for a car that's never happened. And 325,000 people so far yesterday have put down $1,000. Tesla themselves were anticipating, they would hope to get 100,000. They have 325,000 reservations. Multiply that by 1,000. That's $325 million they have. No, 32. Did I get that wrong? Is it 32 million? Is my math gone?
Oh no, you challenged me on the spot now, Tom.
It's 325 million. Just add 3 zeros. It's $325 million they have in cash from people, and with the promise of multiply 325,000 by $35,000 in terms of actual sales when the time comes, and that's okay. Maybe not all 325,000 will actually turn into sales. People might want their money back.
Well, it's fascinating because you can actually get your money back quite easily, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
I'll be fascinated to see when the reservations peaks again to delivery date of delivery of the first one. What the difference in the reservations is then? How many people are just jumping into the hype and the excitement of it, and then how many people are actually going to buy the car?
There's obviously been huge pent-up demand, which has been underestimated. To get 325,000 people to put down $1,000 on a car, a lot of them hadn't seen the car. They didn't know what it was going to be like before they.
We might need to check if Elon Musk has ordered 100,000 for himself just to boost the figures.
There was 130,000 ordered by the time he stood up on stage to launch it.
Well, that might have been his mum then. No, but I think the interesting conversation we had off air, Tom, and for me, his vision to get to this stage and to plan out the Model 1, the Model 2, to get to the Model 3 and the mass consumption, and to have that demand, however credible that is, because there's obviously huge demand there. But for a product that's not going to be available for a couple of years. And the access to finance that will give him to either ramp up production or build a new factory or to work on get ahead onto the next model. Just having the vision to map that out and to create that demand, to create that access to finance.
Because you go into any financier and say, I've got 320,000 orders on my books. They pull out the checkbook straight away.
I've got 325 million in the bank. Don't need to do anything with it yet. Oh, and can I please borrow a few quid more so we can make it bigger, better, faster, or he can donate it all to a wonderful, great cause and save the planet all on his own. But I think the timing has obviously been very right for Tesla, and they've created a great brand and a great product so far. I'm just hoping that the Model 3 is as good and he can deliver to scale.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating to see. And there was this other story linked to that, which I thought was interesting as well. And the story is in the HuffPost business site, and it asks, why would you power a clean electric car with dirty energy? And it's an opinion piece more than anything else. There's no real data behind this, but 325,000 people have said they want a Tesla Model 3. How many of those are going to want to put renewable energy into those cars?
Yeah.
It's if you have an electric car, the chances are you will suddenly become energy educated or energy aware or more conscious of what you're putting into in terms of the energy in your car. It isn't that the 325,000 people who put the money down on the car, are renewable energy fanatics, like you and I might be. But I think when they do get that electric car, they'll suddenly become that bit much more interested in where the energy going into that car came from.
Absolutely, that's the real value of especially the brands. I wrote a piece last night on off the cuff about Apple being, starting to sort of be more confident in this sustainability space. They've been doing some great work for a few years, but now they're starting to communicate it and the power of change that they could be, just because they've got that captive audience, they've got that marketing expertise. But for me, it's the cultural change that Tesla is already making, because it's not only the consumers of the product, but also the rest of the industry. Everyone is sort of comparing themselves to Tesla. Well, Tesla were nowhere 5 years ago. Right. I remember seeing a presentation when they launched the supercharger. It's like, we're going to have a supercharger, one here in the north of the west coast of America, and be able to drive from, I think it was Seattle down to San Francisco. Everyone's like, wow, you can drive an electric car that far. And you could almost imagine the oil companies thinking, yeah, we'll keep our eye on him, but nothing to worry about. Skip to the latest presentations on charging points and superchargers, and there's these, it's almost like a disease. It's like this sort of epidemic of red dots all over, America and creeping into Europe. It's like, do you know what? The cultural change that represents away from that old fossil fuel, oil-based transport industry, I think most people still will not comprehend the political change and the social change.
Yeah, and for people who are unaware, the supercharger network that Tesla have rolled out, this isn't the only place you can charge your electric Tesla car. You can charge them in a lot of places, in shopping centers and things like that, or at home. But the supercharger network that Tesla have rolled out, you get free charges. If you pull up to a supercharger, the charging is free, and you get an 80% charge in something like 15 minutes, depending on the battery bank that you have in your car. So, you pull in, plug in for 15 minutes, and you've got an 80% full battery again from zero, if you were at zero when you came there in the first place. Do you know what I mean? And they, as you say, it's like a red rash. If you look at a map of America now, it's like and Elon Musk, in the launch of the Tesla Model 3, announced that they were going to double the amount of superchargers in the US and Europe in the next year. It's amazing.
Well, at least he'll have the cash to do it, Tom.
This is true. Sticking with transportation, then we saw an interesting one coming out of I think it was Rotterdam. This one came from. We saw a convoy of self-driving trucks completing a European cross-border trip, and this was from a number of truck manufacturers. We had 6 convoys of not fully autonomous, but semi-autonomous smart trucks. Yes, it was in Rotterdam. I remembered something. It's incredible. They arrived in Rotterdam's harbour from all over Europe. You had a dozen self-driving trucks made by 6 of the largest manufacturers. And they arrived in what are called truck platoons. And a platoon is where you've got 2 trucks, one right behind the other, 2 or 3 or 4 in convoy, but they're right up against each other. And the lead one sets the pace, and the others take their instructions from the lead one using Wi-Fi. So it's all automated, and because they're that close together, the drag is drastically reduced.
This story almost sounds scarier than the first one, Tom, to be honest. I thought these were supposed to be getting more positive as we go, and I'd hate to see one of these trucks coming down on me.
But the thing about it is they stick to a set speed. You've got these large, motorways that they're traveling on. They're at a set speed. They're in the lane, not the slow lane, probably depending on which country they're in, the rightmost lane or the leftmost lane. You know what I mean? They're not in the fast lane. And you've got one setting the pace and the other's drafting behind it, so that the efficiency of the convoy is significantly increased. The miles per gallon is increased, so and consequently the emissions are reduced, and as we're heading into more and more sustainable transport, and we're getting the trucks being more smart. I don't like that word, but you know what I mean. You start to see accidents being reduced as well as emissions being reduced, and eventually these trucks, because we've seen some of the manufacturers as well are experimenting with making these trucks fully electric. So these trucks will have electric, smart convoys of these trucks going throughout, and as I say, drafting and keeping their emissions down.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think that the whole concept of smart trucks and seeing some of the way that trucks are driven on the highways that I see just can't come too soon. It's a scary concept of so much weight being automatically controlled. But I think just the delivery of some of these technologies now just seems to be getting faster and faster, and the stuff that that I thought was science fiction, not too long ago, is happening either this year or next year. It's just unprecedented.
It's amazing, isn't it? It is, yeah. It is. It's astonishing. We'll move on. We're skipping kind of topics for a second because we're leaving transportation and moving into the kind of IoT space. And I saw this one come out of IBM and Pfizer, and we've talked in this show before about Apple's research kit and how using sensors built into phones is allowing researchers to aggregate vast amounts of anonymized data and use that for clinical trials. And now we're seeing IBM jumping on board. They're not using ResearchKit in this case, or at least if they are, it's not being mentioned in this article. ResearchKit has been open sourced as well by Apple, so they may be using it and just not saying so. But they're coming on board with Pfizer, and they're looking at experiments to measure Parkinson's symptoms using, they say, IoT and analytics. And the IoT is the sensors not just in mobile devices, but also in sensors around homes, and that they hope to be able to map those and use analytics to see all the movements, because of course you'd have vast amounts of data, so you'd need the analytics to surface any kind of trends in symptoms or whatever, and you'd be mapping it against the use of Pfizer, in this case, Pfizer's medications. So you'd have clinical trials where you'd have people taking the medications, and then you'd map that against symptoms shown up by not, which would be typical, not people taking notes of symptoms or anything like that, but actual objective sensor-based data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think the whole healthcare provision side of technology is just fascinating. I remember I always thought they got the wrong David Connor, but I was invited to Microsoft HQ to meet Steve Ballmer and a few others, and there was only about 10 people in the room. I'm thinking, okay, any minute now they're going to figure out they've got the wrong one. It's just David Connor from Liverpool, not David Connor from the US government or something like that. But it was fine. But just listening to Steve talk about, it's all things sort of CSR and sustainability, and 6 years ago, and I think Microsoft were just trying to sort of be a bit more open and communicate more about some good stuff that they're doing. But Steve, you could tell it really wasn't his thing. He liked running the company, and he allowed other people to do it for Microsoft. But he was absolutely adamant and passionate that healthcare provision and this overlap between IT and sustainability and, you know, the bigger social problems he saw as the biggest opportunity for Microsoft, you know, and that was 6 or 7 years ago. And, you know, Steve's a hard-nosed business person, you know,
Yeah, very much.
You know, you know, and it's always surprised me that more companies didn't jump in as quick as they did. Just seeing where their opportunities were, but I think stuff like this, it's just amazing what you can do now that that data is available and how people know how to manipulate and to interpret that data better.
Yeah, it is, and the amount of announcements we've seen in this space in the last 12, 18 months, you know, has just really shot up. And it's all sensor based, as we've seen the price of sensors go through the floor, and we've seen the availability of devices like smartphones go up as well, and the ubiquity of connectivity. And I think in fairness, Apple's open sourcing of ResearchKit was huge as well. Even the first 24 hours after they announced ResearchKit, you had the largest Parkinson's study ever announced, and this was by orders of magnitude. And it's not just Parkinson's. Now you've got all kinds of other studies coming out in asthma and all kinds of things like that. Even one for surfacing people who are on the autistic spectrum disorder very early, so that, you know, intervention can start at a much earlier age. You know, it's fantastic. It's a whole new industry which, you know, couldn't have been dreamt of.
No, it's a space that particularly fascinates me, Tom. It's just such a fertile area. This almost maturing space between that very traditional private sector model of build a product, sell it for as much as they can, and, you know, everybody else, the governments, the NGOs, you know, trying to solve social problems and environmental problems, and all of a sudden there's this huge space in between those two traditional pillars. Going, okay, there are business opportunities here in, you know, base of pyramid operations in India or developing countries, or looking at healthcare challenges that maybe aren't traditional big profit earners.
Yeah.
But so much more collaboration and openness, and, you know, even looking at the way that Microsoft is acting, you know, being far more open than ever before. Yeah. Not because it sort of has to, but because that's where the opportunities lie. They can't be experts in everything, but they can leverage their IP and their resources and their research and say, okay, well, we've got this problem over here that maybe the traditional business models won't support, you know. That disease isn't big enough for a big pharma to go and find a cure to it. But you know what, if we throw our technology into this and we work together and sort of pool costs, and some of the advances and some of the cures that are being suggested and communicated, like, wow, we're going to have a very full planet very quickly, because no one's going to be dying very soon, because we're all living far too long, and you know, printing hearts and cancer will be eradicated within 10 years. It's like, okay.
The rate of change is increasing enormously, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The whole IoT space as well is fascinating, and it's very fragmented at the moment. So I was interested to see this announcement come from Tom Coates. It was published on Medium either yesterday or this morning, 2 days ago, according to the timestamp up here at the top of the article. And it's about this new thing called Thington. Now, there's been a number of people tried to tackle what Thington are saying they're trying to tackle, and that is to be your kind of single platform for controlling all your IoT devices in home. Where Thington goes a little beyond that is it's not just connectivity to multiple in-home platforms like your LifeX bulbs or your Philips bulbs or your Nest. You know, it'll talk to all of them, and there are several things like Samsung bought SmartThings last year for, I think it was 400 million, because SmartThings were particularly good at talking to lots of different IoT platforms. But where Thington are differentiating themselves is they're building it on top of what they call domestic AI. So they're building a concierge more along the lines of a bot, which, you know, talks to you and you can talk to it, and it suggests things to you. So it's not just that it can control multiple different IoT platforms in your home, but also it will be able to realize, you know, oh, Tom, your friend Dave O'Connor is out, or your Dave Connor is after coming into your home. Do you want us to allow Dave access to your lighting? And you say yay or nay, and it'll do that automatically. And it will then say, Tom, you're after leaving home. Do you want us to shut off the lights? Or you just text it and say, I'm after leaving home. Any chance you'd shut off the lights there, or turn on the lights in half an hour's time, because, you know, I want the lights to come on and off as if I am at home, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it speaks to kind of the conversational commerce idea that Chris Messina surfaced there a few weeks back in his post. And the same kind of thing is starting to happen with other companies as well. And I'm going to flip through a couple of stories here because we're coming up towards the top of the hour and we have several stories to get through, but a lot of them are on the same theme. Facebook have started using artificial intelligence to describe photos to blind users. And this kind of builds on an announcement that Twitter made last week, where Twitter said they would allow people to add alt text to photographs as they upload them. The difference here is that Facebook is not it's not asking you to add alt text to your pictures. What it's doing is it's scanning the pictures and it's adding the alt text itself where it recognizes what's in the picture. And I thought this was cute as well. The researchers in the picture here are the team members who did that. And the team member, Matt King on the left, as you can see, has a stick there. So he's obviously visually impaired. You've got Jeff Weiland in the middle. And then, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the third researcher's name there, Xiao Mai Wu. Okay, I tried to pronounce it. I'm not sure how well I did. But in Braille on her T-shirt, it says Facebook. I thought that was pretty cute for the picture. It turned out quite nice. But yeah, they're surfacing using AI. They're surfacing the contents of pictures and putting it in themselves as the alt text, which is great because it takes away that extra step. It as you're uploading pictures to Twitter, are you going to take the trouble to add in the alt text? Maybe. The majority of people, probably not. If Facebook are doing it automatically, that's an extra bit of friction taken away. And it makes, for people who are visually impaired, it makes the experience that much better. So that's pretty awesome. And we're seeing a lot more AI stuff surfacing. I talked about the kind of conversational commerce thing. Kik, which is a large messaging platform, have put up a bot store. So people are making bots. And this is the new hotness now, is bots for messaging infrastructures. Kik have a large messaging infrastructure. Facebook are doing similar. Next week, Facebook have their F8 or Fate, because it's an F followed by a number 8. Their developers conference, and they're going to be making some huge announcements in exactly this space. So watch Facebook Messenger next week and the announcements there. And then we see smart bots are coming, and we've got this one called Amy, a digital assistant who schedules meetings and raised 23 million. And basically what it is, it's a very low touch one where you go to the startup, you can see it there, it's called X.AI, and you add this virtual assistant called Amy. You see this Amy in your scheduling email, and Amy takes over and does this, looks at your schedule, looks at the person you're emailing, and just arranges the meeting for you. And if there's any changes, sort it all out for you. So
I desperately need one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got Dag Kitlaus, who was the co-founder of Siri, talking about his new AI. He left Apple after Siri, shortly after Apple bought Siri. And I mean, Apple bought Siri about 5 years ago, I want to say, and he left Apple in, I think it was 2012, and has been working on this new one called Viv. Now, Siri, when it came out first, was revolutionary, but as I say, that's 5 years ago. It hasn't improved hugely in the meantime, and he's coming up with this new one called Viv, which he's going to launch at this Disrupt conference in New York in a couple of weeks' time. So that's something to watch out for. And we're seeing massive changes in the area of AI, artificial intelligence, and bots in the last 6-8 months, I want to say. The last two things, and I'm going to flip through them really quickly because we're right up against the top of the hour. Ethereum. Ethereum is what is it? It's based on blockchain technology. It's a company based on blockchain technology, and blockchain technology is the technology behind Bitcoin. And Ethereum has come up with a slightly different take on blockchain. And the way they've come up with the blockchain that they have is it's a programmable blockchain. And as a consequence of building a programmable blockchain, we've had several companies emerge using Ethereum, including Microsoft themselves. Microsoft have put a blockchain as a service on Azure using Ethereum technology. And with Ethereum, you can create programmable blockchains with smart contracts for doing things like energy transactions. And there's been a couple of ones in this space that I know of because I happen to be watching this space. So for example, there was, and we featured it in the show a couple of weeks ago, there was an energy transaction project done in New York where a community solar organization allowed a single community to start buying and selling solar that was generated within the community amongst themselves. And that was all done using Ethereum blockchain technology. So all the transactions were handled there, and it was all traceable and immutable and the whole thing. There's RWE, one of the largest energy companies in Europe, are doing a trial of using Ethereum's technology for car charging in Germany. And there's been a number of others as well. So, and it's not just in the energy space, those are just the ones I happen to be aware of because it's a space I kind of keep a close eye on. So the article that I showed up there, the rise of Ethereum and the rise of the world computer, what that's speculating is that we are in kind of 1994 internet time, but with Ethereum being the kind of world wide web of 94 in today's lingo. And you can see that the stock price there of Ethereum is going up, and it's because it's programmable. And because it's blockchain, it's a whole new paradigm. I hate using the word paradigm because it's so overused, but it is. Blockchain is an incredible technology, and it's been one kind of like graphene that's been out there with promise for some time. And this is the first time someone has made blockchain programmable, and I think it's got enormous potential. Did you want to say something, Dave?
No, I'm just fascinated, Tom. That's a little beyond my usual frame of reference, but just the possibilities that this kind of stuff opens up, and almost the
people are using blockchain for things like e-voting, because it leaves an audit trail there which is immutable. We saw this week the Mossack Fonseca revelations coming out.
And just thinking that.
When banking transactions are run through blockchain and company registrations are run through it, have an audit trail there as well, which will make things like this seem antiquated. That this could happen. So. I want to think that'll happen. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't happen except vested interests trying to stop it happening, and that's a whole other thing. But the last story that I said I would raise this week because I thought it was important and interesting, actually fascinating, was this one. And we saw.
I love that photograph.
It's great, isn't it? I mean,
what's that got to do with FBI encryption or WhatsApp? Well, you know,
I know, yeah. I mean, two guys who look so ordinary, you know, for want of a better word, and they've changed the world.
Yeah.
Overnight, just by, you know, flipping a virtual switch.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a few weeks ago, Tim Cook raised a virtual middle finger to the FBI and say, no, we're not going to write software for you so that you can decrypt the phone of that terrorist in California. We're not going to do it because, you know, that would open a can of worms, and we're just not going to do that. And, you know, kudos to Tim Cook, because, you know, he could have quietly just gone to the FBI and said, yeah, sure, no problem, we won't tell anyone, here you go. But he didn't. He took you know, he took the hard road and said, no, we're not going to do it. Our users are more important. We're just not going to do that. And that was fascinating that they would take that path, and that they did take that path. But what's even more important is this announcement that came out this week. And it was on the 4th of the 5th, or the 5th of the 4th. I don't know whether that's American or not. So it was only a couple of days ago. Either way, WhatsApp is a messaging app, heavily used in Europe, not so much in the US yet. But it has over 1 billion users. And if you think of the social networks that are out there, or the messaging platforms that are out there, the largest of those is Facebook. Has something like 1.6 billion users. The next biggest platform in terms of active users is WhatsApp, with over 1 billion. And WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, you know, as it happens. And that's why Facebook paid so much for it. Facebook bought WhatsApp for 19 billion last year. But they flipped a switch. They flipped a switch during the week, which meant every single communication on WhatsApp was fully end-to-end encrypted, whether it was texting, whether it was sharing documents, whether it was having phone calls or video calls. You can do that on WhatsApp, and it is completely end-to-end encrypted. Group conversations. One of the big uses of WhatsApp is group conversations. That it's massive for that. They're all end-to-end encrypted now, automatically. You don't have to do anything. If you are a WhatsApp user, as soon as you fire WhatsApp and go into an existing chat or a new chat, it's automatically end-to-end encrypted. WhatsApp have no way of decoding it. In fact, one of their executives was jailed in Brazil a few weeks ago for not revealing the contents of a conversation, which he couldn't do anyway because it was encrypted. So suddenly, the whole Apple thing becomes almost redundant, because now over 1 billion people on the planet have automatic, instant, easy access to fully end-to-end encrypted technologies. It's mind-blowing, and the FBI must be tearing what little hair they've left out, because, you know, this has changed everything, and it is global.
Yeah, it's not just the FBI that'll be getting worried.
Yeah, exactly. The Chinese are probably, I mean, will this be, you know, will the Chinese go, okay, no more WhatsApp in China? Or the Iranians, or the, you know, pick your repressive regime. You know? And for me, of all the stories that we talked about this week, this one is the most important by a long shot. The Tesla one is interesting, but this one is the most important, because it has empowered people in a way that has not been possible for hundreds of years, I think, because with the advent of the telephone, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell patented the first telephone. And with that came the ability to listen in on conversations, which was previously much harder to do. So you had, starting with the invention of the telephone, the ability to industrialize eavesdropping. Suddenly, for the first time since 1876, we now have the ability to have private conversations again. It's a huge step backwards and step forwards at the same time.
Yeah, I know there's always the arguments about, these technologies and these communications which being used for non-positive uses, but for me, just the democratization of communications across borders and the security, I always feel it's one of those things that people really take for granted.
Yeah.
And especially the announcement for WhatsApp, you go onto it as a user and you get a little message saying, now all your messages are private. And most people go, I thought they were anyway. Thanks for that, and carry on.
Yeah.
But just to have that level of impact to so many people by somebody pressing enter in a WhatsApp headquarters somewhere is like, wow, there's a bit of a double-edged sword. That's an incredible power to have, but it's also an incredible opportunity, I think, for those who understand the implications and how we can better use that.
Yeah, and I mean, they had some fantastic hackers in there helping do that. Moxie Marlinspike was in there, and I mean, extremely well-known people in the space. So, and they're using open source technologies to do it. So it's it's fully guaranteed end to end using proper standards. It's amazing. Okay, I think we'll call it a show for this week. David, thanks a million for jumping in at the last second and helping out when Chris had to go away and be with his, newly born twins.
That's not a good enough excuse, Tom. But
words, I think it's
good luck to me. He probably needs all the time he can get with two youngsters like that.
Exactly. Thanks so much. We're not going to have a show next week because it's party time in Seville. There's a big annual party in Seville called the Feria de Abril, and it's on next week. So I will be there next week. I'm sorry, we talk about priorities, and I was laughing at Chris just now. My priority is party in Seville, but it's once a year.
Lead by example, Tom. Come on.
Chris has perverted me. Normally I'd have been here, but if he's going to take time off his kids. All right, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Dave, thanks again for jumping in at the last second, and for everyone who watched, thanks for your time and interest, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, Tom.